Hi, my name is Mr. Wilde, and today I'm going to be teaching one-point perspective. And today it's just going to be an introduction and just some of the basics. I have 4 assignments here, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about them. This first one here would be an example of an A assignment. The reason it's an A, you have your horizon line of vanishing point, and then you have all these lines coming very cleanly, very smoothly back to the vanishing point. Areas here where we've altered the squares a little bit or altered the blocks a little bit. Again, lines go back to the vanishing point, very, very clean. For instance, here where we've separated these two and made 2 boxes, nice. These lines are just very parallel with each other. All right, so we're going to go to the B. This would be an example of a B, and for this, everything actually works pretty well. But what we're starting to lose is, as we look at some of these lines here going back to the vanishing point, we're losing some of the precision. Right, these lines aren't coming right to the middle of that vanishing point. Some of them are a little above, some are a little below. Also, the line quality not as sharp, not as concise. Then just a couple of other little errors. This line in here should be a little bit more vertical. This line here, instead of coming at an angle, right, should be more of a horizontal line. This assignment here would be an example of a C, and the student actually started out really well with the boxes, and then also the lines going back to the vanishing point. Where the student struggled though a little bit is when she breaks up some of these boxes and makes compartments out of them. For instance, all these lines here, some of them, though they might be close to parallel, right? Some of them the angle is just changing. Couple more obvious examples of that down here with box number 6, right? We have a nice vertical line, nice vertical line. This one, it changes just a little bit, and then that one changes a lot, right? And when that starts happening, we really start losing that clear, concise, squared look that we're going for with one-point perspective. The last example that I want to show, now this student actually started off great, did great. This little cutout area inside, right, goes back to the vanishing point for this little extension piece. These areas line up really nicely with the vanishing point, but when we get down here to these 2 boxes, boxes 7 and 8, we have a little bit of little problem. So for this box right here, instead of that line coming from the corner, the student should have started in that back corner and brought the line, lined it up with the vanishing point and brought that line backwards. And then here, this box 2 was looking really good, but these 2 lines here, right there, they come in just a little bit. Those should just, they should both be nice vertical lines. If those lines are vertical, it's going to look correct. All right, so to start out, we are going to begin with the horizon line. And to do that, we're just going to kind of measure on the paper. It's 9 inches. So we're going to make a mark at 4.5 inches. I'm going to bring the ruler all the way, just slide it over. And again, we're just going to make a mark at the 4.5 inch mark. We're going to use our ruler as a straight edge. Make sure we now have a nice straight horizon line, just like that. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to line up our ruler with that horizon line again, and we want to make sure that the edge of the paper that the edge of the ruler is right at the edge of the paper. We're going to mark halfway, just 6 inches, and then what we're going to do is we are going to make a little dot or a point, and that is our vanishing point. Now for 1 point perspective, whenever we draw, we want our lines either vertical, horizontal, or going back to the vanishing point. 99.999% of our lines will do that. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to draw in 8 boxes on the paper. Again, vertical, horizontal lines, we want things very, very clean. So the way that we are going to do this, we're going to line up, well, we're going to take the edge of our ruler, we're going to line it up along the edge of the paper, and then we're going to have the top of our ruler right there along the top or edge of the ruler and top of the paper lined up with each other. And what we're going to do is we're just going to draw some boxes, and for these boxes here, I'm going to start at the 1 inch mark, and I'm going to draw a line down to 2.5 inches. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the 4 inch mark and draw it down to the 5.5. And then I am going to drop down to the 6.5, make a mark down to an 8. Now we're going to end up making boxes or making squares out of these lines. So I added just some little tails just to help me know exactly where that line is. I'm going to come to the other side of my paper, and I'm just going to kind of estimate a little bit about I want about a ruler's width. Again, top of the ruler lined up with top of the paper, and again I'm going to come here and I'm going to draw a line that goes from the 1 to the 2.5, the 4 to the 5.5, and then the 6.5 down to the 8. Okay. And now what I have is I have 2 sets of lines that line up pretty well across the paper. All right, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little right square or a little right angle right there, and that is where I'm going to tuck the edge of the ruler into. And on the other side, I'm going to line it up with the top of that other vertical line directly across from it. And this is going to be the tops of the squares. And the first line, it's going to go basically from the 0 to the 2. Then I'm going to go from the 4 to the 6. And then I'm going to start at the 8, and it's not going to quite go to 10, but I'm just going to run that line till I hit the top of my other line. And if you're OCD, tough luck. No, if you're OCD and you have to make that other line 2 inches long, you can go ahead and make that adjustment. All right, so next I'm going to just line up the ruler again, kind of at the 0 is going to be at the edge of that line. I'm going to line it up with the bottom of this line. And again, that line is going to go from the 0 to the 2, the 4 to the 6, and then the 8 to the end of the line. I'm going to drop my line, or drop the ruler down to the next set of lines. I'm going to go 0 to the 2. Now we don't want a line, or we don't want a square here in the middle, so we're going to skip the 4 to 6, but then we're going to go 8 to the line, drop that ruler again, 0 to the 2, 8 to the line. But again, for the bottom, we do want that middle box. So we're going to start here, 0 to the 2, 4 to the 6, 8 to the end of the line. Drop that ruler to the bottom, those two bottom sections, or those two bottom line segments. 0 to the 2, 4 to the 6, 8 to the end. All right. At this point here, I'm just going to again turn my ruler vertical. I know those measurements are pretty good, so I don't really have to measure anything out. Just want to make sure my ruler and the ends of those lines line up to each other, and then I'm just going to connect those to make boxes. And yes, precision is good. You want to be as precise as possible. That's going to make things go the best that they can go. Two more lines. All right, and now that we have our 8 squares, we are ready to start playing around with the vanishing point. Just one other thing, because these boxes here, or these squares, are going to turn into boxes and they're going to be sitting in front of the horizon line. If you want to erase this section of the horizon line, you are more than welcome to. All right, now, also we're going to label these boxes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And so we're just going to start off with box number 1 right here. And in using the vanishing point, what we're going to do is we're going to look at all 4 corners of the box, and we're going to look and see which ones has a direct line of sight to the vanishing point. And so from those 3 corners, we are going to draw a line that goes all the way to the vanishing point. When we do this, I like my line to intersect right through the very center of the vanishing point. For me, it just helps with the precision and keeping everything just nice and clean and neat. And then we'll draw those lines each time. All right, I line up that corner with the vanishing point. Like so. All right, and then the next step of this of the process is we're actually going to separate the square from the vanishing point, and we're going to give it the illusion that it's a cube, that it's a box, not a perfect cube. But what we'll do is we are going to line up our ruler. We're going to make sure again that it's vertical, and then from that top vanishing point line to the middle one, just going to make a vertical line there. And what we'll do is we'll flip our ruler so it's horizontal, and we'll just bring it up. And right now I'm just using my horizon line to make sure it stays nice and flat, nice and horizontal. And then what I'll do is I'll draw a line that way. And then what happens is if I just take my eraser, erase out just a little section of that line, then I end up with a box that is now floating in the air. What I want to do next is actually create a couple more segments of that box, and it'll almost look like a train of boxes floating in the air. But the way that I do that is I'll start on this side now. It doesn't really matter which side you start on. But what I'm going to do is that line where I just erased part of the segment, I'm going to go down. I'm going to do another horizontal line. And then from that point there, I'm going to draw a vertical line, another vertical line. Those little ends that stick out too far. Right. And then from the bottom of this, or from this corner here, I'm going to draw a line straight up. From this one here, I'm going to draw one that's horizontal. Right, so I go to this vertical line here. And I just draw it till it gets to the bottom of the box. I flip this one this way. Horizontal line, right? And then it's almost like I've chopped out a segment of it, right? But because I'm using the vanishing points, everything's still in line and it just goes together real smooth. All right, so for the next step, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make each one of those other boxes floating very similar to this one, where I'm just drawing lines down from the corners to the vanishing point. One thing I'm going to add is with boxes 2, 4, 5, and 7, because of their placement, they only have 2 corners that have a direct line of sight to the vanishing point. So whereas I did 3 lines with box number 1, this box here is only going to have 2 lines going to the vanishing point. Again, I just try to be really precise with lining things up. All right, and so the next thing that we're going to do, now that we have all those lines going back to, the vanishing point, we want to break all these away from that vanishing point, from those lines. And so it can be a little bit confusing, which is why you really need to line up your rulers to make sure you're drawing horizontal and vertical lines. So for instance, right here, I have my ruler lined up with the 4 vertical sides of boxes 3, 5, and 8. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come to the other side and draw those lines vertically. And then because this box here, box number 5, crosses the horizon line, we can't see the top or the bottom. All we see is just the side of that box. However, because box 3 is above that horizon line, we need to now go in and draw a horizontal line and finish that box. Okay. And we can go in similar with what we did with box number 1. We just erase just beyond where those lines actually connect to the box. I'll come down here to the bottom box now. Draw that line across. And just a couple more. That one there real quick. Here. Now we can control the size of the boxes. If you want a box that tends to be a lot smaller, then all we do when we draw those vertical lines or that horizontal line is we just come closer to that line there. So I'll start right there against that side line. Draw that line in like that. I'll bring this one down from the top. Line it up. And we just need to erase out those areas like that. Right? And now we have 8 boxes that are separated from that vanishing point. All right, so there's two other effects that I want to add to these. And the first one we're going to do in box number 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our ruler, but what we're going to do is we're just going to draw a box inside of that square, or just draw a square inside of the box, I should say. And for this, using the edge of the box to make sure I'm nice and vertical. Right. And what I'm going to be doing here, I refer to it as a cutout, meaning I want to make it look like you know, something's dug out part of the box, or that we've chiseled out part of the box. Now what we're going to do is we still need to use the vanishing point, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to take that far corner, we're going to line it up with the vanishing point, and we are going to draw a line towards the vanishing point, but we're going to stop about halfway inside the box and just let that line, the end of that line, just kind of float there for a minute. But what we're going to do is we're going to draw 2 lines off the end of that line. One line is going to go down, and then the other line is going to go across. Now I'm still going to use my ruler to make sure I get a nice vertical line. I'll go down till I hit the, till I hit the edge of the box, and then again I'll do the same thing with that line horizontally. Right, and then again it has the impression that we've, that we have a cutout, that we've actually taken some matter out of that box. All right. Sometimes what you can do, I'll just do a little teeny tiny bit of shading, but sometimes also if you add shading, once you've done something like this, it just kind of helps give it the impression that it's a 3-dimensional shape, right? That it's no longer just lines on the paper, but we've actually created space. The last effect that we're going to do to this, we're going to do something similar to what we did here, though instead of making a cutout, we're going to make an extension where it actually looks like there's a part of, that there's parts sticking out from the box. And to do that, similar with what we did up there, I'm going to do a slightly smaller circle. A slightly smaller square. And again, just always using my ruler to make sure those lines are nice and vertical or nice and horizontal. Right. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm still going to use that vanishing point, and from those 4 corners I am going to draw 4 lines, and those lines are just going to extend out. We're actually going to draw them away from the vanishing point. And the effect is that it's going to kind of look like a table that's on its side. I'm not necessarily measuring these ones, but I do want to draw them about the same length. If you end up with one line that's shorter than the others, that's going to be the line you want to start out with. Should still work out pretty well. All right, so I have my 4 lines coming off. Again, they are in line with the vanishing point, right? We use that vanishing point from those corners to make sure those lines measure up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my ruler up. You know, I'm checking space along the bottom, checking space kind of along those lines that I know are horizontal, just so this stays horizontal. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to draw, or I'm going to connect 2 of the lines that I just drew. And as you can see, there's some tails left over, just, you know, some line segments. I'm just going to erase those out just so that those do not become a distraction later. My next line, I'm going to come off that corner right there where those 2 lines meet, and I want that line just as perfectly vertical as I can make it. So again, I'll just use some of the other lines that I have laying around to help line that up, and I'm going to draw that line down until it runs into one of those other lines. Something interesting is happening here. It's actually lining up almost right on that line. I normally like to try to avoid stuff like that, but sometimes it happens. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat a little. I'm going to push it just a little bit out because I don't want it resting perfectly on that line. But again, just measure it so that line is nice and horizontal. Trace the little end of the line. And then what I'm going to do, and if I did a good job measuring and a good job drawing my lines, then as I draw this vertical line and connect those 2 corners, if I did a good job, those will line up really well. And they're pretty close. All right, so looking at this, there's a whole lot of extra lines in there that we can see. We want to make it more, you know, something like this where we don't have a whole bunch of extra lines, but we need to be careful when we're erasing. We don't want to erase too many lines. But as I go in there, I know I need to erase that line, all these interior lines, and then that just that little bit of a line there. And then when I go in and erase those out, once I get rid of some of that visual noise, it can be a little bit confusing. And what we end up with is this box, right? Or this extension piece of a box that is coming off of box number 6. All right, so just a really quick recap for this assignment. You need to put in the horizon line, the vanishing point. You need to draw 8 boxes, and then you need to draw the lines, or 8 squares that will become boxes once you draw those vanishing points, or those lines that go down to the vanishing point. And then yes, you need to square off those boxes. You need to create a segment in at least one spot like this. You need to add a cutout, and you need to add an extension. And thank you very much.